terms. The first one here is the SDD, which stands for source to diaphragm distance. Source to diaphragm distance. What are we talking about here with diaphragm? Your aperture windows, your aperture diaphragm. So it's your source to diaphragm distance. DD stands for your diaphragm dimensions, the size of the opening, your diaphragm dimensions. Okay. Now here is your X-ray beam being projected through your aperture window, the aperture diaphragm, as it's being reflected down. ID stands for image dimension, or let's just call it your beam dimension, your X-ray beam dimension. That'll help. ID stands for image dimension or beam dimensions. Okay, and everybody knows what SID is, right? Source to image distance. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So, the reason I'm introducing these new terms to you is that when apertures or cones are used, it is important to calculate the beam size, okay, and also determining the size of the needed aperture dimension. Okay, this is going to make sense here in a bit. Bear with me. So calculation of the aperture dimension, the dimensions of this, is going to be, X doesn't mean times, it means by, because we're talking about dimensions here. So we're talking about length and width. So A by B over source to diaphragm distance is equal to the dimensions C by D over source to image distance. A by B is the dimension of your diaphragm. C by D is going to be the dimension of your beam size, the projected beam size. So to find our dimensions, we're going to have to do this twice. Okay, we have to do this twice. Once to figure out the width, the other to determine the length of the aperture size of our window. Okay? This is what it means. Let's just say, for instance, here is my image receptor. My image receptor is my cassette. Okay? Let's just say it's 14, bless you, by 17. 14 by 17. Okay? I need to determine what size aperture I'm going to use and add a distance from my source to aperture distance to get it to the right size of my beam until I fill up that 14 by 17. You know what I'm talking about, right? That 14 by 17 size image receptor. Okay, so first I need to determine the size of this window to give me my beam size of 14 by 17. That was tough. Okay. Actually, I think it's better if I do this. Bear with the glare, okay, guys? That's why I like the other one better. Okay, so a film size is 15 by 10. Okay? So we need a beam size of 15 by 10. A film size of 15 by 10 is to be imaged at 100 cm distance. So down here, your image dimension is going to be 15 by 17. You guys following so far? The diaphragm is going to be placed 8 centimeters away from the source or the target. My SID is 100. What is the dimension of my aperture window to give me a beam size of 15 by 17?
Is it 15 by 17 or 15 by 10?
Oh, sorry, I don't like doing that. 15 by 10. Okay. Thank you. 15 by 10. What size window here do I need to give me a projected beam size of 15 by 10? All right. So again, we got to do this twice. Your first dimension, okay, we're going to figure that out. The first dimension of my window, I need to figure out. So the width over 8, where did I get 8?
The SDD.
SDD, okay, here's my 8, SDD, is equal to the first dimension, 15, over a distance of 100. Cross multiply and divide, 1.2. Now I got to figure out the other part of my dimension, the length. Length over 8, is your SVD, is equal to 10, over here now, the second part of your beam dimension, over 100 SID. I now got 0.8. What that's saying there is my window, if it was square, is going to be 1.2 by 8 to give me a beam size of 15 by 10 when it is placed 8 centimeters away from my source. Okay? Second problem is exactly the same. My field size that I want is 14 by 17. Can you guys see that up there? Mm-hmm. 14 by 17. My SID is going to be 72. 12 inches, source to diaphragm distance. So I need to figure out again the dimension of my aperture window at a certain distance from my source to give me a beam size of 14 by 17. Okay? Let's figure out the dimension of 14, and then we'll figure out the dimension of 17. My aperture window should be 2.33 by 2.83. Now these numbers here, these are just examples. They're usually whole numbers, okay? But this is just to give you an example. So it wouldn't be anything this outrageous like 2.3 or 2.7674. It'll be like 3 by 4 or 5 by 7 or anything like that, okay? They're usually in whole numbers, okay? But just so you have an understanding of how this formula works, okay? Any questions? Okay, this is what I want to do. I want to switch rooms. So I'm going to give you guys a 10-minute break.